So with Daniel, you're going to find out that Daniel's audience, I don't know what you know about Daniel. I'll give you a quick kind of bring you up to speed on Daniel. But Daniel is a prophetic book. The first 6 chapters are stories from Daniel's life. Then the last 6 chapters, there's 12 chapters in the book of Daniel. The last 6 chapters are prophecy. And incredible prophecy, even like the one tonight. There's the accuracy on it is so precise that people go, Daniel wrote this after the fact. Somebody wrote this after. Nobody can be that precise because there's numbers that he's going to put some numbers out, and I'm kind of ahead of chapter 8. I'm in chapter 9 right now, and chapter 9's got some numbers in there too that are just like, whoa. They actually predict the day that Jesus is going to ride into Jerusalem on his donkey, to the day. And so a lot of the stuff that's in here is kind of deep, but all this to say the audience, I think for a lot of this, is going to be those people who live through the tribulation. And so it's a prophetic book, it's a powerful book, but it's not to say that, okay, well, why are we studying it? Because we're not, hopefully, if we're born again, we're not going to have to endure the tribulation and such, but there's things that we can pull out of this that are really cool. And if nothing else, it should give us the urgency for those people that we do know who don't know the Lord to just be fervent and I don't know, I don't want to say obnoxious. That's not the word I want, but to just be spreading the gospel because the time is short. The time is short. So anyways, like I said earlier, what David said with the whole full disclosure, it is being taped. Because one of the things I think, this Daniel, I think hopefully at some point in time, somebody who's living through the tribulation will be going, what's the book of Daniel? And I think I knew somebody who was teaching Daniel. Let me see what he says. And so what we're going to talk about tonight, I think those people will be enjoying it then. Well, they won't be enjoying it then, but it'll be like making more sense. But feel free to ask questions. I'm a high school teacher by day. And so I enjoy knowing exactly where my audience is at as far as you didn't understand this, you understood that, or you got something to add. Feel free to add it. The microphone may not pick it up, but we'll still enjoy it, right? So some things about, if you don't know about Daniel, first thing is Daniel's in captivity. He was in Israel. Israel was being disobedient. They had fallen away from God, quite honestly. Jeremiah and Isaiah had prophesied. There were 2 prophets to God's people that said, hey guys, stop it. And they're like, Israel's like full ahead of, boring ahead in sin, and consequently, they get taken into captivity. There's 10 tribes in the north, and there's 2 tribes in the south. And the Assyrian Empire is up and running at that time. And so the Assyrian Empire, although it's not in Daniel 9, just want to give you some background, they're going to take the northern 10 tribes and take them to Assyria. And then Babylon is going to rise up, and Babylon's going to come in, and it's going to take the remaining 2 tribes, and of which Daniel is a group of that, and take them to Babylon. Okay? Eventually, the Persian Empire is coming, and eventually the Greek Empire is coming. And I say Greek. You guys heard of Alexander the Great?
I worked in front of him in college.
There you go. And so he's not actually Greek. What is he?
Macedonian.
There you go. He's Macedonian. Why is it called the Greek Empire then? Do you remember?
It was Alexander the Great, and he conquered a lot of territory.
He did?
He went very far.
But why do they say it's a Greek Empire?
Because he took over Greece.
He was actually tutored by a Greek, and he loved Greek culture. He's a Macedonian, which is north of Greece, but he was raised in Greek culture. He loved Greek culture. And so he almost thinks it's his mission to go around the world and spread Greek culture. So you'll in this chapter and the following chapters, if you're reading through Daniel, you'll hear them talk about Greece or the Greeks, and we're going to talk about that tonight. And that's actually Alexander the Great, who's Macedonian, but for all general purposes, he's a Greek. And so the one things this chapter here, I'll tell you, there's actually a point, and when I get to it, I'll stop there and pause. But it actually caused me to scratch my head. Why did God do that? Why did God do that? So I had a couple questions. First off, the effects of sin. Now, think about it on your personal lives and at a personal level, the effects of sin, at a national level, the effects of sin. How does that affect your hearing, your spiritual hearing? How does that affect your spiritual understanding? Yeah,
Fogs it up and kind of distorts it.
yeah. How well can you hear when you've got sin going on in your life or in your all around you, your culture, your nation?
Not very well.
Not very well. And so you're going to find where Israel's at. And so there's some things that it really picks up with chapter 9, but there's some stuff here in chapter 8. And the other thing too that kind of was interesting for me too was that how do we feel when all around us is out of control and in sin? How do we feel as God's people? Do we have questions over our head where we go, God, are you still on the throne? Are you paying attention to what's going on right now? Why is this going on right now? And that, a lot of that's some of the things are going to happen here. And like I said, there's a point, and I'll stop here and I'll pause, where I like going, God, what did you do that for? And so you bear with me here. And so if you got a Bible, we're in Daniel 8. Break it open. We're going to go verse by verse. And so it's that's the way I teach. I go verse by verse, and so I read a little. We talk a little. Read a little. Talk a little. So if you got your book, what page is it on?
518.
518. Yeah, if you
Not
got.
even there yet. How does he know it's 5:18? He's just saying.
No, he knows what page it's on.
Well, that's the start of the book of Daniel. What chapter are you on?
I'm on chapter 8.
See, I told you it wasn't 5:18.
Yeah, chapter 8.
Okay, 524.
There you go, 524.
51.
I'm on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Verse 1. In the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel. Your Bibles may say Susa. Does your Bible say Susa at all? Yeah, okay. And I'll explain that in here a little bit. Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Okay, and so you have to understand, first off, there's 3 shifts that take place. The first is a shift in language. The book of Daniel goes from Hebrew to Chaldean back to Hebrew. And so with this chapter, with chapter 8, it's back into Hebrew. And I think to some degree it might, and you have to, I'll float ideas out there and I'm always telling you, hey, this is my idea. And this is not, you feel free to disagree with me. But I can't help but think it's going back into Hebrew. It's almost like saying, Jews, I'm speaking to you now. Listen up. I'm going back to your language. I was in Chaldean, which was the language of the Babylonians. Okay, now I'm going back to Hebrew. Israel, pay attention. That's just me. Okay, there's also a shift right now with that very first verse. There's a shift of location. Okay, so at this time, Daniel's in Babylon. When he gets the vision, he's in Babylon. He's not been to Susa or Shushan. He's not been there yet. That's the administrative. And you may remember that from some of your history classes. Susa was the administrative capital of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire hasn't taken over yet. He's still in the Babylonian Empire. It's in the future. In his vision, he's taken to the capital of the Persian Empire that hasn't started yet. Okay, so there's a shift in location. And what's kind of interesting too is Shushan or Susa, which is the capital. He mentions that. He also mentions Elam. Elam is where the Assyrian Empire, remember I told you the Assyrian Empire took the 10 northern tribes, they took them to Elam. Well, that's where the Persian Empire is at. That's where Susa is at. And so, because there's a lot of people go, oh, the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and they make up all this like weird stories about the lost 10 tribes, as though there's some mysticism about where did they go? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the Assyrians took them to Elam. The Persian Empire is in Elam. So when the Persian Empire, spoiler alert, the Persian Empire is going to take the Babylonian Empire. So when they take that and they take them off to Susa, they've now rejoined the 10 tribes with the 2 tribes. So now we're 12 tribes. And so we don't have the lost 10 tribes. So I'm curious about if there's lost. And this is also, Elam is also where Esther and Nehemiah are going to show up there later. And the last thing is there's a shift in consciousness. His last vision was while he was sleeping on his bed, and it's in Daniel 7:1. He basically says that while I was sleeping, I had this vision. This one here, if you look ahead, let's see, did I write where it was? Yeah, verse 26. In verse 26 of this chapter, he says, this is the vision of my mornings and my evenings. So he's actually having like daydreams. He's having day visions. And one of them is kind of interesting too, as we read into this chapter here. He's in the middle of, he just got part of the vision and he's like scratching his head, it's like, what was that all about? And then he gets, the vision continues. So it's like, whoa, don't go to sleep yet. Don't try to figure this out because I'm not done. God's not done with his vision with you. So it's kind of interesting. And he does say he prays 3 times a day. So perhaps, he prayed morning, afternoon, and evening. So maybe it was like during his morning prayer and his evening prayer, he has these visions. But this vision takes place in the daytime. So without further ado, verse 3. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there standing beside the river was a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. Okay, so we got a ram here. And the ram has 2 horns, and one horn's bigger than the other. So you have this, it's called the Persian Empire, but you have to understand it's the Medes and the Persians. The Medes were first. The Persians are going to marry, and I think it's Cyrus that marries, and don't hold me to it. David, is your history better than mine? I don't remember that.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but I think it's Cyrus marries in, and so he's a Persian, and the Medes are, so it's these 2 empires, they combine, and initially the Medes are the bigger and the better, but the Persians eventually take over. And so that's what you're seeing here, this ram with its 2 horns, and one eventually goes higher than the other. That's the Medes and the Persians, with the Persians establishing, what's the word I want, priority? I'm lacking for words there. What's that?
Dominion?
Dominion sounds good. I like that. Now, but once again, I'm going to repeat this too. This vision is so precise. Like I said, he's in Babylon predicting the Persian Mede Empire, and he's already predicting that one's going to be better than the other. One's going to rise up within them. And so people are like, I think Daniel wrote this after the fact. Anyways, verse 5. It says, and I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. And so this is where we get the introduction of the Greeks. This is the goat is Greece, or Macedonian, as we talked about. He moved without touching the ground. You have to understand that the Macedonian, Alexander the Great, did not, people couldn't stand up to him. He's coming at you, and he's coming through you, and he's going to take over. And so he conquers. He's this young man. I think he was 18 years old or something when he conquers Greece and begins to move into Persia. Young man. The notable horn between his eyes is Alexander the Great. And the part I thought was interesting, no power in the ram to withstand him. You have to understand, Alexander beat the Persians in 3 battles over 5 years. And so in the last battle that he fought them, the ratio was a 2-to-1 ratio. The Persians outnumbered, they don't know for sure, but the conservative estimate was a 2-to-1 ratio. Persians to Greeks, and when with the last battle that they had, see, did I write the numbers down here? Yes, I did. Yeah, the Persians lose 40,000, and the Greeks lose 1,000. So it's just he's just phenomenal, and it goes right in with this prophecy that Daniel's given here. And stop me, because I'll keep rambling. If there's no questions, I'll just keep rambling. But right now, we're in the kind of vision like, oh, okay, there's a Greek and there's a Greek goat and a Persian ram. Okay, continue, Jim, because that sounds okay to me. Anyways, therefore the male goat grew very great, and when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And one of them, out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So now we're getting kind of into some weird stuff here. We all agree? Okay, good. So we got this little horn. Okay, little horn. And Sandra's going to help me make sure I get this. Antiochus. Okay, Antiochus Epiphanes, right? Did I say that right?
I don't remember how the second one was.
Epiphanes.
Epiphanes, there you go.
There we go, Epiphanes. Have you guys ever heard of that name? Antiochus Epiphanes?
No.
Yeah. Have you heard of Antichrist?
Yes.
Okay, bingo. Okay, and this is where it's going to start to get weird, because Antiochus Epiphanes, it's a Greek name, so I have trouble with it every time we were like drilling each other how to say it, and then we actually put it onto Google. It's Google, how do you say this? And so, have you guys ever tried that? It works pretty good. There's a little mouth, and you can even slow it down. Epiphanes. Remember that? Anyways, we're having fun with that. Anyways, there's this character who's going to show up, and that's what they're talking about right here. Daniel is talking about this character here, and he is a carbon copy of the Antichrist that happens to Jerusalem after they go back. After they get out of captivity, spoiler alert, they're going back, okay? And they're going to rebuild the temple, and they're going to rebuild Jerusalem. And then eventually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get back to, Antiochus. It's not a Greek. Are you guys taking Greek as well? Okay, good. So I don't have to worry about you guys. Jim, you're saying it wrong. Anyways, this character shows up. That's the little horn, okay? And his name means anti-support, which are, against support. I don't know why his mom named him that, against support. But it's interesting because Antichrist, and his name is anti or against support. So anti-support. Anyways, and he actually believed himself. The second part of his name, Epiphanes, he named himself, and it was a name he gave himself that meant it was a divine manifestation within him. He was God, and so. The Jews at that time made fun of him. They changed Epiphanes to Epimanes, which means madman. And so the Jews would make fun of him, but they didn't make fun of him for very long. Anyways, it says here they cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. So this guy is going to go in. Well, first off, let me back up. The 4, I didn't put that in my notes, but the large horn was broken in place. 4 notable ones came up towards the 4 winds of heaven. You have to understand, Alexander the Great dies when he's like 33, and he has no heir to pass his empire down to. So his empire gets divided into 4. Okay, so his 4 generals are going to divide it up, and that's the four notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Okay, so that's where that comes from. It's going to be divided in this Antiochus. Gosh, that just won't stay there. Antiochus. Yeah, right. Sure, I'm going to remember that. So he's going to get that area of that contains Jerusalem and Israel. He's going to be just nasty. He is going to be just nasty towards the Jews because they're not Greeks. Okay, he's going to attack Jerusalem on the Sabbath. He's going to specifically wait for the Sabbath to attack them. He's going to murder and kill approximately 100,000 of them. Okay, and this is where it gets a little weird too. He's going to take male babies that are circumcised and hang them like hang them outside the door, their front doors. The guy is just brutal. He kills approximately 100,000, and the ones who survive, he causes them basically to sin to the point where they've lost their faith. So those that object are going to die. Those that are, will stand up for their faith will die, and those who don't will be so polluted, sin-wise, that it's just it's unbearable. And so that's when it says it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars of the ground and trampled them. That's what it's talking about there. Also, it says it exalted himself as high as the prince of the land. He's going to replace the high priest. And I don't know how familiar you are guys with the Old Testament, but the high priest was the pinnacle of the priesthood and did most of the important stuff within the temple. He's going to replace him. Now, which is interesting, he's going to put another character in place of the high priest. Well, this is the first indication that things aren't all well in the promised land, because when he takes that person and puts him in place, because that high priest is more in line with the Greeks, it actually causes a bidding war amongst the other Jews. Hey, Antiochus, he gave you 10 grand. I'll give you 12 grand to be the high priest. And so we kind of automatically get this like, what? Shouldn't you guys all be like upset that he did what he did, instead of trying to outbid and bribe your way into office? So there's an indication there. And if you want to read more about this, Maccabees, there's like 4 books of Maccabees, and it didn't get included with your Bible, and you can go read about why not. There's a whole bunch of reasons why not. But the 4 books of Maccabees talk about this and give you lots of information about it. But I would use that as side evidence more than I would use it as actual gospel, because there's a reason why it's not there. Anyways, so he exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. And you got to keep in mind too, he's going to put the statue of Zeus, Greek god, into the temple. He's also going to slaughter a pig and put the blood of the pig up on the mercy seat. So he's going to defile the temple. Not a good guy. He's going to oppose the daily sacrifices, and evil is going to prosper. And so it's I don't know if you guys have read much of David at all, the Psalms at all, but David runs into this same thing too, where he's like, God, why does evil prosper? What's going on here? And so this guy's going to prosper. And Antiochus, see, I just look over there and you give me that like, yep, you're saying it right. Just as Antichrist is going to prosper. Okay, they're both going to prosper. And I don't know if you've been in times in your life, but I know I've been in times of my life where all around me evil was prospering, and it seems like I wasn't getting a break. It's like, Lord, what's going on? David ran into that same kind of thing where he's like, you anointed me king, and now people are chasing me around trying to kill me. Am I the king, or am I some vagabond that's living in caves? And so I really identify with David. And David in a psalm, Psalm 37, verses 1 through 4, he basically talks about how the mental picture we should have during hard times. And it's Psalm 37, verses 1 through 4. It says, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. All right? And so that's with this, there's a where it says this, evil's going to prosper. And so the thing we always have to keep our hearts set on the Lord, and we don't have to worry about that. So both Antiochus and Antichrist are both going to war against God and anything representing him. And so your association for both of these guys, your association or your allegiance to God is going to cause you to forfeit your life in both of these instances. Antiochus, Antichrist, exact same scenarios in both. In Revelation, the book of Revelation, it talks about the people who come through the tribulation actually the Antichrist is going to wage war on them, and it's going to cost them their heads. That's another reason why you want to be born again now, and give your life to the Lord now, so that you don't have to lose your head later. Anyways, verse 12. And this is kind of an interesting thing too, and I really kind of glossed over it initially. I'll read verse 12. It says, because of transgression. Right there, I'm going to stop. Because of transgression, because of sin. I kind of glossed over that initially, but when you go start reading Daniel 9, you're like, oh, wait a second. It talks about this a lot, transgression. So hang on with me. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. That's what we're talking about. So there's a transgression going on at this time frame, and it's a transgression, sin. It's going to be maxed out, and it's going to be maxed out at the national level, in this case with Antiochus. It's going to be maxed out at the global level, and which is kind of weird. It's like, and Sandra and I, we have conversations all the time about, you start looking around the world, and you kind of like, okay, you guys, like this is kind of like symbolic of checking your pulse, right? You're like, okay, my heart rate's about right, I'm okay. And then maybe you check your temperature. It's like, okay, I'm good, right? Well, if you were to do this on the world right now, with regards to sin, I mean, look around. Look, I don't know how much you guys are, how much you're seeing, and maybe it's because we're older, where we've seen this much time go by, and so now we can see things in our days now that we didn't see over here when we were youngins, or here when we were middle-ins, or I don't know what this is, later on ones, okay? But we're seeing now, like, holy macaroni, transgression is like, I mean, what is it? What have we yet to see? I mean, because there's so much sin going on right now that the truth is in doubt. What is the truth anymore? What is a truth? How can you go out? Can you go out that door and can you say this is a truth, and not find 5 people that disagree with you? By the way, and I'm talking about the big things in life. A simple one, like God created man and woman. Is that okay? That's a truth. But go out that door and ask 5 people, do you believe that God created only man and women? How far can you get? How many people can you talk to before you run into I beg to differ? You with me? Transgression is going to max out. So anyways, this is with Antiochus. Transgression, the 2 things, and then these should be your attention getters. When transgression is maxed out and the temple is standing, that's when you're like, wait a second, the little red light's got to go off, something's not right here. And so this is with Antiochus, the temple standing and transgression is maxed out, okay? And so you have to keep in mind, the Jews, and I said this earlier, spoiler alert, they're in captivity now with Daniel, and he's prophesying of what's going to come, and especially Daniel 9, he's going to prophesy what's going to come. Because was it Isaiah or Jeremiah? I can't remember which, maybe both. I had forecast that they would be in captivity for 70 years. I want to say it's Jeremiah. Don't hold me to it. David, do you remember? No? Okay, no problem.
I'm reading through the whole Bible for the first time, and I'm on the book of Numbers right now.
I want to say Jeremiah. So Daniel knows that they're only going to be in captivity for 70 years. So he's already getting ready. That's Daniel 9, but I'm in Daniel 8, so I'll stay in Daniel 8. But they're going to go back, and they're going to rebuild the temple. Now, that sounds cool. That sounds like, yeah, okay, because of sin, we got carried away to captivity. God's now got our attention. He's dusted us off, and we're feeling better now. And we're going to go back and rebuild the temple. And we're going to get it right. No. Here's the thing. You cannot confuse the fact that they're returning to Jerusalem and they're rebuilding the temple, that everything's okay. It's not. It's not okay. And so a couple of things so don't confuse rebuilding a temple with a functioning temple. Because I'm going to give you a couple of things. Have you guys ever heard of Shekinah glory? Shekinah glory. Okay. Shekinah glory, and I'll give you a couple verses that I'll read to you, but Shekinah glory is the presence of God, his spirit in the temple, that's so overpowering that ain't nothing else going to happen that day. That's Shekinah glory. And I'll read you, there's two passages that talk about it. Okay, well, first off, you have to understand, there's three temples. There's the first one's not actually a temple, it's a tabernacle. That's the tent that Moses went around the wilderness with. Okay, that's a tabernacle. But it's a tent, but it's everything in it is arranged exactly how the temple is going to be arranged. So I'm going to call it a temple, even though it's a tabernacle. So there's three of them. The first one is the tabernacle, and in Exodus 40, here's Shekinah glory. Ready for Shekinah glory? Here it is. It's chapter 40 of Exodus, verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, and Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of the meeting because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. So you get that? I mean, the presence of God is so strong, you can't go in there. Ain't nothing happening that day. Just take the day off, because God is here. He's in the house. That sounds almost like in the house. Anyways, I digress. Okay, it's called Shekinah glory. Same exact thing happens in the first temple. So Solomon's going to build a temple, right? David wanted to. God said, no, your hands are too bloody. I'll let Solomon do it. So Solomon builds a temple, and it's pretty cool, pretty awesome. And that's actually going to stand for 410 years. And guess what? It experienced Shekinah glory. It's in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. When Solomon had finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices. And the glory of the Lord filled the temple, and the priests could not enter the house of the Lord because the glory of the Lord had filled the Lord's house. So we got Shekinah glory in the tabernacle. We got Shekinah glory in the first temple. So far, so good, right? Well, guess what? We got another temple when they're going to go back. When they're going to go back, they're returning. Remember I told you just because it's a rebuilt temple doesn't mean it's a functioning temple. Guess what that third temple, whether you call it the second temple, because there's a tabernacle and two temples, or whether you call it third, I don't care. But that temple never sees Shekinah glory. It sees something else, but it never sees Shekinah glory. There is no recording of Shekinah glory resting on that temple. It lasts for 585 years, and never does it see Shekinah glory. It does see something else, though. Anybody else know what it sees? Somebody when he was 12 years old. Jesus. Yeah, every Sunday school answer, right? Jesus. Remember he got lost? He got detached from his parents. It's like they're like 3 days out of town. It's like, I thought Jesus was with you. No, I thought he was with you. I thought he was with Uncle.
I must be about my father's business.
Yes. So it never saw Shekinah glory. That temple never saw Shekinah glory, but it did see the Son of God. That cool? And now think about this too. Think about Jesus' ministry. I don't know if you ever realized, think about Jesus and the temple and his ministry. The last 3 years of his life, his ministry. Do you realize he bookends his ministry with two events? See, where is it? Do I have them in here? Yep. John 2, 13 through 16, and Matthew 21, verses 12 and 13. And I'll post these things up later on. If you want to go back and read these verses, feel free. Jesus bookends his ministry with cleansing the temple. I don't know if you ever realize that. You sometimes like, well, I remember reading that story, but I thought he only cleansed the temple once. No, if you read him, because John 2 is at the beginning of his ministry, and Matthew 21 is at the end of his ministry. He cleanses the temple twice. What does that tell you about the condition of the temple? Now you got to keep in mind too, there's something to think about here. Herod takes that temple. Okay, Antiochus. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Antiochus. We already talked about defiles it, right? He defiles it, and he's going to do nasty stuff. Herod is going to come in and revamp it and put money into it and make it majestic and make it awesome, and it's going to look really good. But guess what? It's missing. Spirit of God. And oh, by the way, Jesus has to cleanse it at the beginning of his ministry and the end of his ministry, and apparently it didn't learn its lesson because he's doing the same thing at the beginning of his ministry as he's doing at the end of the ministry. The temple was functioning, but not with the Spirit of God in it. We'll come back to that in a second, and towards the end here.
Was that the same temple where all the money changes were?
Yes, yeah.
That's the one time where we see him really angry.
Yeah. That's those two verses I told you about. Them. Let's see, where were they? I have them in my notes somewhere. The John 2 and Matthew 21. Yeah, those are those. That's when he's mad. Yeah. And interestingly enough, too, I think this kind of it tells it all more than anything. You guys, we just had Palm Sunday just recently, right? You guys know what that's for? What is that commemorating? Do you remember?
The death?
The Palm Sunday? Yeah.
It commemorates the day Jesus came into Jerusalem. They laid down palm leaves for him.
Yep. And that's when I told you it was predicted with precision in Daniel 9, that day that he comes in. But now here's what he says. This is what's interesting. Okay, once again, think of the temple not being what it should be, right? What God had designed it to be. This is on that day, Jesus, as he's coming into Jerusalem, this is the speech he gives in Matthew 23. He says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. And you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. And it's like, wow. He's right there. He's calling it. The temple's not what it should be. And so, anyways, we'll go back into Daniel here. I spent a long time there. I just thought that's cool stuff. Sorry. Verse 13. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Okay, there's a number given here. So that transgression of desolation, the Jews call that something else. Do you guys know what it is? It sounds just like that, transgression of desolation. You heard of it? The abomination of desolation? Have you heard of that? It's the same thing. It's basically the defilement of the temple. And these two holy ones are standing there like, hey, holy one. That could be like us right here, right? Hey, holy one. How do you say Antiochus? Yeah, anyways. They want to know, how long is this defiling the temple going to do? Okay, first off, let me back up here for a second, because maybe I didn't make this known. Okay, Daniel is prophesying of something that's coming in the future. He's still in Babylon, still in captivity. The Persians haven't taken over yet. He's talking about post-Persians, Greek Empire, talking about the Jews going back to the temple and the temple being defiled. And he's prophesying, the two angels, these are two angels, by the way, spoiler alert, two angels are talking to each other. And the one angel says to the other, so how long is this defilement going to take place? How long is it going to last? And he gives him this number, 2,300 days. 2,300 days. That's pretty precise, isn't it? 2,300 days. I mean, if it's interesting. So here's the thing too that I think the point that's being made here is God is giving a precise time here. And bad things are happening. Remember what we were talking about earlier? It's like, okay, when everything's going crazy and you're like, God, are you really in charge? Are you paying attention? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? God in this verse here gives 2,300 days because he wants us to know he's in charge. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you how long it's going to last because it's got a purpose. It's serving a purpose. It's going to last for 2,300 days. Go mark your calendar. If you're like a prophet back in the future, and you're reading Daniel and you're going, but actually that's not going to work. I digress. I'll tell you why. But anyways, you could have looked at that thing and said 2,300 days. In 2,300 days, it'll be all over with. So we just got to wait 2,300 days. Okay, this is 22, what is it, 22.99? Yeah, we're not quite at 2,300. Okay, one more day, we're there. Anyways, I digress. But what's interesting, the Jewish calendar, if you do the math, from the time Antiochus he ends up murdering the high priest. From the time that he murders the high priest to the time that the Maccabees cleanse the temple. That's where we get Hanukkah, by the way. If you ever wondered where you get Hanukkah from, that's celebrating the Maccabees cleansing the temple. From when he killed the high priest to when the Maccabees cleansed the temple, guess how many days it is? 2,300 days. And so it's so precise. This is so precise that Daniel's prophesying here. And I think it's God letting us know, even when it's going crazy, he's still in charge. It's serving a purpose. Don't lose sight. Do like David did. And not that David, but the David I talked about earlier. But you probably do the same thing. Keep your eyes on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. Okay? He'll give you the desires of your heart. So, and what's interesting too, when we go to Daniel 9, if tune into Daniel 9, it'll come up later. But Daniel 9 is going to talk about precise time as well, that the Antichrist is going to defile the temple. Anybody know what that time frame is? No? A time, and a half a time. 3.5 years. In Daniel 9, he says, the Antichrist, because see, the Antiochus is in 8, and a little bit in Antichrist, a little bit in 8, but Antichrist is in 9. And so Daniel in chapter 9 is going to talk about a lot of what he talked about in Daniel 8. And so, 3.5 years. And once again, it's precise. And so I think it's for the people to know, the people who are going through the tribulation, so that they know that God's in charge. Anyways, back to Daniel. Sorry, I keep digressing. Verse 15. Then it happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning. So here's that intermission. He's like, he's seen the vision and he's thinking about it. So we're kind of like an intermission of the vision. Okay, seeing that, what does that all mean? All right. So, and seeking the meaning, then that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Eli, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. Who do you guys think that is? Jesus. Yeah, that's always works good for any Sunday school class, right? Jesus, I think so too. Once again, remember I said, kind of test me. I have some theories too. I'm with you too. I agree. I think it's Jesus. So this is the vision of the evenings and the mornings too. So whether he was like doing this he had the vision in the morning and then in the evening, Jesus spoke to him. I don't know. But this is called he says this in verse 26. So this is the vision of the evenings and the mornings. Anyways, so there's one having the appearance of man with a man's voice, and he's going to order Gabriel, which is one of those holy ones, to make Daniel understand the vision. Understand the vision. Okay? So he's saying, okay, because Daniel doesn't understand it, so I'm going to say I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say it's Jesus. Says to Gabriel, hey, make him understand this. Okay? So when there's a couple of ways that I think that it's Jesus. One of it is, did you see where the man's voice, did you see where his voice came from? Where does it say in verse 16, a man's voice, where did it come from?
Between the banks of Ulai.
All right, so is this guy a ventriloquist then? How does he get his voice over the waters? Guess who speaks over the waters in the Bible? Yeah, it says in Hebrews, Psalm 29:3 says, the voice of the Lord is over the waters, the God of glory thunders, the Lord is over many waters. In Hebrews 1 says, God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in times past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world. So anyways, and also, spoiler alert too, if you look farther into Daniel, he talks about this guy again. He says in Daniel 12, he says, then I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a times and a half a time. So Daniel's going to refer to this guy later on. And I honestly think that, I think it's, what was that called, a Christophany? Christ, have you heard the term before, Christophany? Christophany is where theologians believe that person that was speaking in the Bible, that was Jesus, Because you can't see God and live, yet when God shows up and he's talking to people and they live, well, there's the Son of God. You can talk to him and see him and live, but you can't see the Father and live. So anyways, I digress. Verse 17. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man. The vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me up. So there's going to be, I'm going to give you 6, I think, things to understand. Gabriel's going to say, okay, I'm instructed to make you understand. I pulled out 6 things that Gabriel's trying to get Daniel to understand, which consequently wants us to understand. But just a total side note, and if you guys tire of my side notes, let me know and I'll quit putting him in there. But what happened to Daniel when he sees Gabriel? He falls down, right? You're like, he passes out or whatever, right? I don't know what you call that. It's like meeting some famous person. And you're like, you ever see the goats that scared and their legs freeze up and they fall over? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does that. I don't know what are those goats called?
Wooden knee goats.
Okay, wooden knee goats. Yeah, he does one of those. Well, I think this is kind of interesting. Okay, so he sees one angel and it scares him and he faints. Yes? Okay. Check this out. Mary, I think it's Mary Magdalene, goes into the tomb, sees 2 angels. Does she pass out? What does she say?
Did she think they were gardeners though?
No. She thinks the guy behind her is a gardener.
Okay.
Who's the guy behind her? What's the Sunday school answer?
Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. Okay, the guy behind her who she thinks is the gardener is actually Jesus. But she talks to these 2 angels and say, where'd you put them? Where'd you put them? Just tell me where you put them. Okay, it's in John 20. But what's kind of interesting is, okay, so why did Daniel pass out and Mary Magdalene didn't?
Jesus.
I like that. Yes, because she was a woman? No, I don't know. But I thought that was kind of interesting. She's like unfazed. She's like 2 angels, you're sitting on either side of the bed, and like, okay, angels, you holy ones, where'd you put them? And I honestly think it's because she had been with Jesus. She had been with the Son of God. That was like, I've been with someone holier, because Daniel refers to these as the holy ones. And all they are angels. And sure, angels look holy and what have you. But she had been with someone holier than those guys to the point where she's like unfazed. She's got 2 angels. And she should have been like, and I fell over and was like asleep until they picked me up. Now, she doesn't say that, but Daniel does. And so that was just a total side note. Anyways, so here's understanding, because he's going to give them understandings. And I told you there's going to be 6 of them, right? So here's the first understanding. He says the vision refers to the time of the end. So this vision that you just gave, even though it's like labeled and shaped like Antiochus, it's for the end times. That's his first understanding. So even though we're going to talk about Antiochus and all the events that took place, the vision is focused on end times. Okay, then why did that happen then? That's we're getting close to why. Actually, this is why I'm going to introduce something here that I'll talk about here in a second. Okay, there's an understanding, but here's a spoiler alert. At the end of this chapter, okay, you guys ever seen Men in Black? You guys never seen that, Men in Black? You have. Okay, so the only 3 of us here can. Okay, Men in Black. Whenever they have like an experience where they want everybody to forget it, they all put their sunglasses on, right? And then they have. I don't have a little object. Oh, here, perfect. This will work. Then they have this little light, and they go, okay, everybody. Okay, they got sunglasses on. They say, everybody, look into the light, and they hold this light up and they flash it, right? And then what happens to everybody? They totally forget. They're like, huh? What am I doing here? Okay. At the very end of this chapter, a Men in Black incident happens. Gabriel is going to spend some time explaining with understanding to Daniel. But at the end, there is a Men in Black incident. Once again, this is my theory. Don't take it from me. But you're going to find out at the end, the angel tells him, now seal up the book. The sealing of the book is the understanding of the book. And this is what I struggled with. This is the part where I struggled with, is because he's going to give him understanding that all these things I'm going to tell you about Antiochus are focused on the Antichrist. So I'm like going, okay, God, what? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you seal up understanding? Because people could have known that Antiochus was coming and he was going to do what he was going to do, and some might have been saved. So why did you seal up understanding? And I kind of had to scratch my head on that. And I honestly think it's because God knew that the people, this is just me, my takeaway from this, I honestly think that God knew that people didn't really care. The people really didn't care, and so this was going to happen. Whether it was sealed, the understanding was sealed or not sealed, it was going to happen. And so I'm telling you here, Daniel, because the things that are about to, first I'm going to tell you things are about to happen, but your understanding is that I want you to focus on the Antichrist. I want you to focus on the end times, because all these things that are about to happen are going to happen again. And so I'm telling you, for me, I kind of struggled with this. Like, why was all this understanding sealed? It's unsealed. With John in the book of Revelation. That's another spoiler alert that's later on in my notes. It's going to be unsealed for us. We get to know this stuff. But the people who lived through Antiochus, even though this was written before Antiochus, they didn't understand it, which is kind of bizarro. But anyways, so understanding one, first understanding is this vision that's about to be given is focused on end times. Even though it's about Antiochus, the focus is end times. Okay, we got understanding number one? Okay, here we go. Verse 19. And he said, look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the later time of the indignation, for at the appointed time the end shall be. The ram which you saw, having two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn is between his eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And so he's explaining all this stuff. If you were confused at all about this weird goat and this weird ram, he's just explained it to you. So understanding number 2 is kind of tightening it up. It says, I'm going to make known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation. Indignation means the pouring out of the wrath of God. So I'm going to let you know what happens in the latter time of indignation. That's the same way of saying, I'm going to let you know what's going to happen in the latter time of the tribulation. Those last 3.5 years, I'm going to let you know what it is. So that's understanding number 2, okay? Understanding number 3, he says, for at the appointed time the end shall be. And I think understanding number 3 is there's a specific historical sequence that has to happen, and then you'll know when the end of time shall be, okay? And so with Antiochus, we knew that it would be the Persians defeated by the Greeks, and the Greeks would divide into 4, and this guy was going to go persecute the Jews. With Antichrist, it's going to be the same thing. He's going to be more specific in Daniel 9, and I don't mean to hold you off to Daniel 9, but both of these scenarios are going to center in on Jerusalem and the temple. Verse 23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty. Who do you think we're talking about right now?
Jesus.
No. No, wait a second. Back up here. A king shall arise having fierce features who understands sinister. I could see that. Maybe I gave that to you. Okay, but I'll continue reading, and then you see if you want to stick with Jesus on this one here. A king shall arise having fierce features who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power.
Never mind.
Pardon?
Is it the Antichrist?
It is the Antichrist. Yeah, this is the Antichrist. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully and shall prosper and thrive. he shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes. Who do you think the prince of princes is? Jesus, yeah, there you go. But he shall be broken without human means. Okay, this is understanding number 4, and this is describing the Antichrist. And so this is understanding number 4, describing the Antichrist. Now, the first thing is he's going to arrive when transgression is maxed out. And that's why I say look around today. You know, if you think transgression is maxed out and it's coming up in an exponential, I would agree with you. But it's going to continue. It's going to continue. He's going to have fierce countenance, it says there. Fierce countenance. I looked that up. That means a threatening presence, like demonic. It's going to be demonic. He's going to have sinister schemes. The Hebrew words there for sinister schemes, he's going to understand dark sayings. That's kind of weird stuff, isn't it? Power is going to be given to him, but you have to understand, there's no power unless God gives it to him. So Romans 13:1 says, "For there's no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God." He's going to instill fear with his destruction. He's going to prosper and thrive, as does deceit. And 2 Thessalonians, all these verses talk about this stuff too. 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 and 10 says, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the work of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteousness, deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved." So 2 Thessalonians talks about this guy having lying wonders. He's going to destroy the mighty, the holy, and the prosperous. Revelation 13:7 talks about that as well. He's going to exalt himself and rise against the prince of princes. Once again, 2 Thessalonians talks about that. It says, "Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." I mean, that's just like Antiochus Epiphanes, whatever his name was, where he said he was basically divine manifestation. Yeah, this guy here, Antichrist, can do the same thing. However, he's going to be broken without human means. And Revelation 19:20 talks about that. Basically, God's going to capture him and throw him in the lake of fire. Verse 26, and we're almost done. "And the vision of the evening and the mornings which was told is true." And this is, okay, remember your Men in Black moment? We're here, we're at the Men in Black moment. So the vision of the evenings and mornings which was told is true. Therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterwards I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. Now you realize Gabriel just spent a whole bunch of time getting him to understand it. And there's still 2 more understandings I'm going to give you here. And so, but the Men in Black moment happens, and even Daniel doesn't understand it, which is, whoa, God really sealed it up.
How'd
But
they write it down?
well, he wrote it down, but he didn't understand it, which is interesting. And I think that's a divine thing too, where, okay, God, I'm writing it down. Okay, whatever. I'm just writing it down. And Gabriel spent a whole bunch of time explaining this to me. It's not making sense. I'm just going to write it down. And he does that. I'm doing this, but really, did they do this back then? They didn't have keyboards. I'm over here, it's kind of funny, I was saying, write it down, and I'm over here like typing. And I should be like, write it down. All right, anyways, sorry. So here's understanding number 5. Gabriel instructs him to seal up the vision. So it's physically there, but not understood. That's understanding number 5. No one understood it, which I think is kind of interesting. But Revelation 22:10 is when it's unsealed, because John has this exact same, not exact same. I would liken the book of Daniel is like what's going on in the tribulation at 30,000 feet. Revelation is that same thing down, but it's down more at ground level. John has the same vision, and Revelation 20:10 specifically says, "Do not seal up the book." because now is the time to understand it. And so what's kind of interesting, it's now we're it was sealed up to not be understood, but now it's unsealed. And then my last understanding is that one catastrophe was served specifically and only to help us understand the other. Okay? And so what else do we hear? I think that is it. Yeah. And I honestly think that this chapter is specifically designed for those people who go through the tribulation to understand the tribulation more. And you got to keep in mind too, and this is, I don't know all you guys very well. I know David to a pretty good degree. I think we know each other fairly well, but I don't know you guys. You need to know the Lord. You need to be born again, because if you're not born again, then you're going to be visiting this book again, because hopefully in the tribulation, you'll be like going, oh man, I remember Jim, it's going to be 3.5 years. Ugh, can I hold on? But he also said too that, I kind of mentioned it, I didn't really dwell on it, that in the tribulation, those last 3.5 years, if you're not born again, or I'm sorry, if you become born again and you won't take the mark of the beast, which is interesting too. You guys, and I got to close up here, but the mark of the beast, you have to take it on your forehead or your hand, or you can't buy or sell. That's going to happen in the tribulation. Okay? Are you guys paying attention to COVID passes?
Yes.
What's a COVID pass? What's that?
Just to show that you've been fully vaccinated, right?
Yeah, but what are they telling? Have you heard what they're talking about using them for?
No.
Okay, you can't travel. They're talking about proposing the fact that you can't travel. Universities right now they won't allow students to return to school unless they have their COVID pass.
I think it's already happening in New York. I mean, with the stadiums and everything. Even with traveling, I think it's already happening.
It's starting to happen, and I'm not saying that's the mark of the beast. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's the mark of the beast. But what I'm saying is a system is already being set up to basically, that's going to be mirrored in the tribulation. So that is Daniel 8. I left you with some questions if you guys want to chew on the questions. But how do you typically do? You close in prayer when you're done?